Good morning. This is Gator. This is my second Gatorcast or podcast. I feel like I'm clever for calling it Gatorcast, but probably not. But anyways, I'm going to be talking this morning about Far Cry 5. And if you're listening, all three of you, warning, there will be spoilers. I finished Far Cry 5 this past weekend, so I want to talk about several things, what I liked, what I didn't like about it, my overall recommendation about the game, and I also want to delve into the story and the ending, which I think is probably the most interesting part of it, at least as a discussion spot part about it. But so anyway, so you've been warned if you are playing Far Cry 5 now, and you are about to do the ending, or you haven't done the ending yet, then stop listening now and come back to this. So you've been warned. Anyways, let me get this right out of the way. There was a lot of things I liked about Far Cry, but let's talk about the things that I didn't like. And it's really nitpicking because I think overall, this is a solid game. It's a solid entry to the franchise. I think it's very true to the franchise. It's good fun. There's a lot of little inside jokes. But let's talk about the elephant in the room before I delve into the dislikes about the political climate of the game. Is the game over politicized? Is it under politicized? I don't think so. I don't think there's really anything controversial about the game, and I think that's probably why across the board it's been getting slammed by the different outlets that like to politicize games. The Polygon, Kotaku spear of things where they pretend like they're not being political, but they indeed are being political. The game doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, do anything that could really hard offend anyone. It doesn't actually attack Christianity. They make it really clear if you're playing it that the cult isn't essentially a true Christian group. They obviously have some similarities to Christians, but it's pretty obvious that they're a very radical splinter group. And being clear and transparent, I'm Catholic, and I didn't find anything in that vein as far as religion offensive, unless I guess if you're a cult leader and you fornicate with your cousin, maybe that would offend you. But if you're not a cult leader or a inbred, then there's really nothing in this game that should offend you. As far as politics go, I mean, there is a quest where it's clearly a nod to the Trump P-tape controversy, and it's kind of funny quest. Talking to people who are pro-Trump and anti-Trump. I think it didn't offend the people who are pro-Trump, and it also at the same time it didn't really pander to people who hated him either. I think it was just kind of making fun of the situation. So besides that quest, there's never really any moment in the game I feel like was really trying to be really political or really edgy. So they didn't really take a lot of risks, except at the ending, and we'll get to that in a minute. So we got that out of the way. Let me go backtrack a minute. Polygon did an article where they basically slammed the game for not being political enough. And, I think there are some games that, I think that's a fair criticism, but a mainstream AAA game that's trying to market itself to as many people as possible. And don't get me wrong, there's people out there who will completely bash a game that tries to be mainstream because, heaven forbid, a game is successful and makes money. I think that was obviously a smart play on their part. Like, why make a game that would alienate anybody? And so, of course, Polygon dinged it for that. And, Kotaku had a couple of things, from their editor. I believe, Patricia Hernandez wrote a thing about kind of in the same vein that, the game fails because it doesn't really take a position. If you want someone to take a position, then read an academic piece. Go read, whatever your slant is. I mean, is it really necessary to be in a video game? No. I mean, let's be honest, it doesn't need to be. Um, Now let me talk about what I thought was really, really good and fun in this game. Right off the bat, the system, the Guns for Hire, is a lot of fun. You know, if you've played it, and forgive me if you have played it, but let me just explain it for folks who haven't. The Guns for Hire is this really cool system where there's 9 different NPCs or animals that you can do a quest and unlock, and then that you can summon them to kind of help you do quests. Like, for example, there's Boomer the dog, which is, just Google Boomer and Far Cry 5, and you'll find 100 videos about him. There's Cheeseburger the bear, Peaches the cougar, and then there's just a gamut of crazy characters. There's Nick, who's the pilot, and he's married with a pregnant woman, and he's stressing about the baby coming along. In the meantime, he's trying to protect his business from the crazy cultists. And you got Grace, who's a expert sniper, professional shooter. You got Jess Black, who is, if I'm not mistaken, the niece of Dutch, the Vietnam vet who rescued you at the beginning of the story, and she's like a stealth character. You got Herc, which is a son of a hard right leaning guy who's running for Senate, and Herc is like his goofy, screwed up son who, is just constantly getting in trouble. And he's actually a lot of fun. He's got some great lines where he kind of laments about he joined the cult, and then he found out there was no fornication and no drinking, and he thought, well, that sucks, and so he starts his own cult of one, and there's some funny moments about that. And so the Guns for Hire system overall is really fantastic. It kind of reminded me of the animal companion system and Far Cry Primal, but it took it to the next level where these characters have a little bit more personality. They interact with each other depending on the composition of your group, and they actually can either make or break certain missions depending on who you use. And so it applies some strategy. If you're playing on easy, you don't really need them. If you're playing on normal or hard, they are essential for pulling off some of the more tough missions. I also was completely blown away by, and no pun intended, blown away by the flight suit in this game. It took a little bit to get used to the controls. There's a Clutch Nixon mission, which is the Evel Knievel nod missions where you got to go out and do all kinds of crazy stuff, but where you learn how to do a flight suit. But once you get the hang of the flight suit, it's just crazy fun. It's probably the most efficient way to travel the map. You can drop in on a spot and literally coast across the map very easily once you get the hang of it, and it's just beautiful. With the open world, the seamless transitions. I mean, I also want to commend them for the fact that you can get in a helicopter or a flight suit and start at one end of the map and go all the way over, and there's just no lag. There's no clipping. I mean, I didn't experience anything like that, and it kind of lends itself to the strength of the engine, the strength of obviously the different AI scripts they got running don't interfere with that, and so there's just no lag. It's very seamless. You get loads when you go in and out of a cut screen, or obviously when you're firing up the game, or you moving from the game to the shop, which is a little bit annoying. But as far as the gameplay, you're going through an outpost and move to another outpost. It's seamless, and it's beautiful, and it really lets you enjoy the open world, and it's one of the strengths of the game. Same with the flight suit. I enjoyed all the flying vehicles in the game. I feel like they really got flying right. You have, you got regular P-52 Mustangs. I think that's what they're called. You got, those airplane ducks that can land on water. You got a gamut of different types of helicopters. And it just really lots of fun to fly around and engage enemy on the ground. And the scenery is just beautiful for it. And I also want to take a minute and talk about arcade mode. Arcade mode in this game is fantastic. I think it's going to really lend itself to replayability. if you play Far Cry 5 for just the shooting mechanics and like the story and taking out the cult leader, you really get enthralled in that. Maybe arcade mode might not be for you. But if you're one of those people who you really want to get a lot of value out of a $60 game, arcade mode is really just an endless gamut of things you can do. And I played around with it for about 3 hours, and I didn't really spend too much time making any of the maps myself. I went into the creator to kind of get an idea how it works, and it seems like if you took the time to really look at all the assets you could do, you could really build something really incredible with this, and some people have. So I would, if you haven't tried arcade mode, give it a try. It might not be something that you will put a ton of hours into, but I could tell you that there's definitely a niche for that, and there are people who are already just going crazy in that mode and making some really wild stuff. But let's just start talking about one of the negatives, I think, which is there's some negatives with the story. I overall enjoy the game. Don't get me wrong. I highly recommend this game to anyone who likes a good shooter with like very task-oriented things, good side quests, good sound. If you like the other Far Cry's, I think this is probably one of the strongest ones they've ever made. It's definitely, in my opinion, better than 4. I think it's up there with 3. Some people, I think, like 3 more, but this is a very solid game. If it's 4 was like really horrible to you, or you didn't really like Far Cry 3, and you're like, well, it seems like it's more than the same, then you probably will be that way for you. And I would say, well, then wait for the game to come and sell and pick it up then and give it a try. Or if you're in one of the situations with a red box and you can rent it, it's probably a good game to rent to experience it for a few hours, because it's a solid game if you want to dabble with it. But if you liked any of the other previous Far Cry's, this is a no-brainer. But anyways, the story, there was some, this is me being nitpicky, because if you follow anything I do on my website or YouTube, I absolutely hate, the mob mentality of trashing a game that's really relatively, I think, arguably good. This is an arguably good game. But if I was to nitpick it, there was a couple things I had issue with the story. One, I had an issue with the ending, and I'll get into that in a moment. But I also had issues with the pacing of the story. One of the things that they did, if you played this, and I'd like to know what you think, is that when you got to a certain point in each section of you had, there's Joseph Seed, the father, and then he has his 3 siblings, and they each controlled one of the 3 areas that you need to liberate. Once you got to a certain point in the story with each one of those siblings, you had a very like a cut screen that would just stop you from whatever you're doing. And the premise was you would get shot with a tranq dart, and then you force into a cinematic. And it really just didn't lend itself well to the narrative. And I kind of wish that, I see why they did it. It makes it very easy for the developer to kind of keep the story going and force the narrative to go and allow you to play the way you want to play. But then it's an absolute disconnect that you're just like, you're right in the middle of doing something, liberate an outpost, and all of a sudden you get shot with a tranq dart, forced into this crazy cut screen. And it's almost kind of made me think of that scene in Austin Powers where Dr. Evil's telling his son, like, hey, we're going to get Austin Powers, and then we're going to get like a Shark Tank, and then we're going to torture him. And then Seth Green, who plays his son in the Austin Powers series, goes like, why don't we just get a gun and shoot him? And then Dr. Evil's like, are you not listening to what I'm saying? That's kind of how it felt, because you get tranq dart like at least twice in each zone. So it's like 6 times that you're caught by the enemy. You have them monologue to you, tell you how like the Joseph Seed doesn't want to kill you yet, but they would if they could. And it just kind of just didn't make any sense. Like if you think about it from this aspect, here you are dieharding your way through their cult, fucking massacring their numbers, and then they capture you 6 times where they could have just simply put a bullet in your head and then ended it. But no, they capture you, they monologue, they go into this big old diatribe why they're going to let you go, and then they let you go, and then you rinse and repeat. It just didn't really make any sense. In a couple of those scenes where you actually escape, but again, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would they send these like special commandos to put you to sleep, put you in a cage, monologue, and then they don't take care of you? It just didn't really. It really kind of broke immersion. But overall, I was able to give that the pass because everything else that shined about it. So I finished the game this weekend, and I got the story, and my initial reaction was, well, this kind of doesn't really answer anything, or I didn't feel like it gave closure. So let me explain. If you're listening to this and you know the ending, then you know what I'm going to say. If you're listening to this because you don't care if I spoil it, well, here it goes. The ending that I got was I basically chose to bring in Joseph Seed, and so immediately you start seeing a nuclear blast go off. It's like a holocaust happens, and the world is basically going crazy because a nuclear war has launched off. And apparently, if you listen to like radios leading up to this, there's tensions between the United States and North Korea in the game, and basically it makes this leap that you basically the world goes into a nuclear holocaust. Joseph Seed basically claims he's right, and you end up being stuck in a bunker with him. The other version of the ending is where you decide to back off, take your people, and leave. He ends up like obviously brainwashing a huge group of your people, and you get to take the sheriff and 2 others, and you're driving away, and the sheriff's like, we're going to come back for him. We're going to go get the National Guard, and we're going to come back and rescue everyone else. And then the music plays that played during the Jacob Seed sequences, which is this Only You song, which was like a trigger to like have you go on a killing rampage. So it kind of implies that like, maybe you're brainwashed and that like the day doesn't get saved. So both endings in a nutshell are anticlimactic and don't really provide any closure. And I kind of feel like it's cheap. Like, I was a completionist, so I did every quest, found every collectible, did everything you could in all 3 zones 100%, and then beat it. And then I get this nuclear ending, and then I had to go on YouTube to find out the other ending because it doesn't give you the option to go back and play the other ending. You pick one, and then you're stuck. And the only reason I know the other ending is because other people have posted it online. So it kind of felt cheap. I'm one of those people who absolutely hated the ending of Mass Effect 3, and the Mass Effect series was like my favorite franchise for several years, and then that ending left such a bad taste in my mouth that it just kind of ruined it for me. It wasn't as bad as Mass Effect 3's ending, but it had something in common with it, which it was kind of meaningless. There's nothing you do that dictates the outcome of the game, because both those endings are negative endings. They're not happy endings. There's not a resolution. There's not a closure. So that's my overall take of the game. I think it's a solid game. If you like these kind of games, you like shooter games with open world maps, highly recommend it. If you're kind of lukewarm on that, or you're kind of burned out, wait for it to go on sale. I think it's definitely worth any person who calls themselves a gamer who likes to play a lot of games. It's definitely worth picking up when it gets on sale. No doubt. I obviously feel like it was a strong enough game to get right out of the gate. So here's my question to you. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Reddit. Gator6Charlie on Reddit. Gator6Charlie on Twitter, Facebook. My website is gator6charlie.com. Let me know what you think. What you thought about the story. What do you thought about the ending particularly? I really like to know, am I alone in thinking the ending was kind of cheap and kind of didn't really give us closure? So let me know. And I hope you guys have a great Monday. And I'm hoping to do maybe 1 or 2 more of these this week and see how it goes. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.